Alright, so Astro's Elite PlayStation 4 controller is now out. It's the Astro C40 TR Tournament Ready controller, and it works for the PlayStation 4 and the PC. Now, there's been a lot of questions around if you should buy this controller. It is expensive. It is $200. It falls more into like the Elite tournament style controllers, like the Xbox One Elite controller, like the Vantage controller for the PlayStation 4. There are other competitors out there, even like SCUF controllers, but this has been hyped up by Astro to no end. So I figure we'd take a look at it, unbox it, and there's been a lot of questions about what's actually inside of it because there aren't any teardowns or anything online, so we'll tear it down because why not? And I figure if you're going to buy this controller, you want as much information as possible, and that does include the internals to see if it's kind of on the cheaper side or if there is a lot of quality here. So if you're new here, make sure you subscribe and of course hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And let's actually start with the unboxing. Now, the C40 controller comes in a box that is extremely high quality feeling, which is awesome. They have this slip cover, but once that comes off, you're treated to a very hard cardboard, very thick cardboard that does feel like it has a lot of quality to it. It does feel like you just bought a very expensive controller. And then inside of there you have a very large instruction book along with some warnings about returning it to your store. You want to call them if you have any issues. But the C40 has a very thick, very large roadmap-esque set of instructions. There's a lot going on with this controller because you can do a lot of things like connect it to your PC to configure it. You have profiles to set up, all kinds of stuff. Now you do get this nice case. It has a bunch of like dots on the front, kind of a texture. But you get this nice case that comes with it. And when you open it up, you're treated to the Astro C40 controller. I'm going to put this aside for a second so you can see what comes in here. I have a piece of foam. In here we have our tool that allows us to unscrew the front because this is customizable to a degree. I'll actually show you what you can customize essentially there. And then you have several different thumbsticks to choose from, whether you do like kind of the indented feel or you like more of the dome feel from like the PS3 controller, for example. And then you have a USB stick because, yes, this is a $200 controller, but it does still use a USB dongle to plug into one of your USB ports. So keep that in mind. You will lose one of your USB ports no matter what you do with this controller with your PlayStation 4. Also with PC, of course, when you plug this in, you'll lose a USB port there. We have much more available USB ports generally on a computer than we do on the PlayStation 4, where those are kind of at a premium. You know, you don't have as many on the PlayStation 4. But let me put that back in there. And you also have a very large cable up top here in your pouch. Very large micro USB to USB Type A that you can plug in, as this both has a wireless and a wired mode. So if you're a tournament player, you're probably happy to hear that there is a straight up wired mode you can activate with this controller. Looking over at the controller, it is a very hefty controller. It's heavy. This is not light. If you are a fan of lighter controllers, that's not this. So this weighs in just over 300 grams. A normal PlayStation 4 controller like this, which by the way looks much smaller if you really compare it to it, is about 210 grams. So this is nearly 100 grams heavier, and you can feel it. I assume it's more from the materials, as they both have, of course, rumble and everything, but I feel like it's more or less from the material. It has this very nice, like, rubberized coating to it, so it feels very good. It feels like it would take a lot of, I guess, sweat and gripping it really hard. The front here is made up of like a hard plastic with some screws here that go through. I believe that's hard plastic. And then we have, of course, touchpad here. On the bottom, we have a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. On the back, we have these switches for hair triggers, so they only have to pull halfway. Whereas if you have them set down, they pull all the way. That'd be for racing games. You have a few macro buttons here that they have labeled as UL and UR. And then we have a button in the middle here that will essentially either reset kind of the controller if you have some issues with the back buttons, or of course it will set your back button. Simply press that, the back button, and then the main button on the front that you would like, and it is then set to that. So you can map this on the fly. You don't have to plug it into a computer and program it or anything with their very in-depth programming suite. So you don't have to do all of that. The best part about this controller that I like so far are the triggers. The triggers are tremendous. The amount of travel here is great, and there is some serious tension to it. It reminds me of the Xbox One controller, but better. So if you're someone who is looking for a premium controller for like overall use, this works great for racing games as well as shooters. Of course, they have the hair trigger in there for shooters if you're looking to get some quick shots off there rather than have to pull all the way down. So they do have solid triggers in there. I mean, they feel great to press. They really do. The thumbsticks here are fairly loose, which is weird. Definitely looser than like your standard PlayStation 4 controller. The tension is not as much, so keep that in mind. I like controllers that have kind of that on-the-fly tension adjustment. I remember my Razer Anza controller had that, where you could change the tension and it would be much harder to push around. This feels very, very loose, so keep that in mind. If you don't like loose thumbsticks, you won't like these. The D-pad is tactile, whereas this is more rubber membrane, so you can hear it as you press around. Definitely better if you're playing like a Call of Duty or something and you're changing between and you want a tactile press, that's better. I think this would be better for a fighting game, the regular PS4 controller, than this one. I don't think this would be as good for like a fighting game, for example, although most likely if you're into tournaments and stuff for that, you're probably using a fight stick. At the top here, we have a change between profiles, so you can do profile 1 or profile 2. So you can have that all kind of already programmed and set up in the program that you plug this into and use on your PC. You have wired mode and wireless mode. So in wired mode, you of course just plug it in with your micro USB. This is concave, so it won't pop off very easily, and then you would plug it in or switch to wireless mode and it will connect to that USB dongle. This apparently has 10 to 12 hours of battery life. I noticed on the PS4 when using wireless mode, the PlayStation 4 could not tell how much battery life was left, but I guess that's just kind of the price you pay if you have a wireless dongle. I assume the wireless dongle is used primarily to eliminate any lag through Bluetooth, as they do have a 5 millisecond lag, as they like to point out on their website. So if you want to change this around, for example, I like offset sticks, right? These are symmetrical. I like them offset. Very easy to do. You have, of course, those 4 screws here. You unscrew those, and then you can actually change these around on the fly. They also mentioned that stick drift can be combated by changing these out completely. So a lot of times if you're playing, of course, Call of Duty games, stuff like that, Battlefield, your stick can start to drift over time. So as you wear on this, the stick will basically, in the neutral position, start to move slowly left or right. The idea here is that if one of these sticks goes bad, you take it off just like that, you put a new one on, and you're good to go. However, despite them mentioning that in their instruction video for this, I can't find another place to buy these separately. So I assume that's a plan they have in the future where you can buy one of these, like these joysticks for like 10 to 15 bucks, maybe 20 at the most. And then you don't have to buy an entirely new $200 controller, because these will see abuse, obviously, if you're in the market for this. So the D-pad would come off as well. That would go over here, of course. And then my analog sticks would be offset at that point. You can't do anything with the buttons. They stay in place, so you can't just like, I don't know why you would want to, but you don't have that kind of freedom. Although the D-pad, I guess, could technically go over here if you wanted to for whatever reason. I don't know. I guess you could do that if you want, I guess. I don't know, again, why you would. But yes, you can pretty much take these completely out and put them back in any order you want. They have setups here so that you know which way you're putting them in. They even have a red line at the bottom that basically shows, okay, you have to have this little plastic notch here in that correct position. So pretty cool there to be able to customize it, and because it's held down by actual screws with solid tension, unlike other controllers I've checked out that try to do this, it feels way more solid. So that is a big plus there by Astro. Now, figuring out how to take this thing apart might be a bit of a challenge, considering there are no guides online to do that and there are no visible screws. But I'm pretty sure the way we would do this are these grips here would probably pop off using a spudger, and then we should see some screws to where we can start taking it apart. So let's take a shot. So pretty much as I expected, this popped off. There's a lot of clips back here that are very strong holding that down, so you might have a hard time getting it off. But after doing that, I can see 2 screws here, both Phillips head, and I assume that's going to then free the front. So I still have to get this side off, and at that point we can unscrew it and see what we get. Okay, so both of those are off. I'm unscrewing it now, and hopefully it just opens up in the front. We'll see. I don't really see any other screws outside of these 4, I don't think. So I pretty much unclipped all the way around, and check this out. Astro hid a screw right there underneath your sticker. So there you go. They, of course, do that. Usually when you see a sticker like that, A lot of times you want to check underneath of it. I think we've pretty much learned that at this point, but there you go. They hit a screw under there after unclipping all of this, and now it comes off. So yeah, that's fun. Anyway, that's now off. The battery is an 1100 milliamp hour battery here. Runs down. It is a plug-in. We have our macro triggers plugging in down here as well. Very large buttons, by the way. Check this out. Look how large these buttons are on this thing. That one actually just popped right out. Let me get this one off there. Look how large those buttons are. That's going to help so you don't have many mispresses. It also makes me wonder if they could have fit 2 on each side in here, similar to the Elite controller, considering those ones are much smaller. These buttons are very, very large. I guess that's just to make sure you do get those presses in, and they do feel good to press, and I don't feel like I'm accidentally pressing them like the Xbox One Elite controller does, where I do get that feeling at times. But there you go, we have 2 very large red buttons, by the way. Down here we of course have our preset button here, this black button here, and then below that there was a little pinhole. That's for the reset button there, so if you need to, you can take like a pin, pop it through, and you're just pressing that button at the bottom there. It looks like they have this stacked, and below that is where they have the headphone jack there. They have it stacked with some headers. Looks almost like it's plugged and then soldered, which it is. So that's fine. That's a solid connection, a good way to do it. And then otherwise we have to take these rumble motors out, which are also plugins. Looks like most of the stuff here is all modular, which is great because it makes it way easier to take apart. I also noticed the long press triggers here have kind of that band on the back, I assume with a little bit of weight to help out with tension. They look nice. They remind me of the Xbox One controller for its triggers, so that's probably why it feels very similar. But I do like these triggers a lot. It looks like they are built pretty well there. So one thing that's really weird, after I removed the screws inside and lifted it up, the shoulder buttons are actually soldered. These, the R1, L1, and I assume that's to save space. They are directly soldered to the board above, which kind of makes it annoying to take apart, since you basically have to be able to slide them out of that position, and sometimes they're kind of stuck in there like this one. I'd have to really pry at it, and I'm to the point now where I would be putting it back together pretty soon anyway, so I don't really feel the need to do that. Now, the front part here is pretty solid. The plastic is very thick, and that probably has a lot to do with like the weight and everything, but the plastics used are high quality, which is good. They feel solid. They're not easy to bend in your hand or anything. The board itself uses a very thick PCB here, which is what I would expect 100% from a controller this expensive. And looking at it, it doesn't look crazy complex inside. Like, you can flip it over and you can see everything is mounted, which is good. So sometimes you'll see controllers where stuff's kind of floating, or it's mounted to the back. So it would have been mounted to back here, for example. You even have some screws and nice red on the inside there too, but they would have been mounted to like the back, for example. You unplug it. This is all mounted straight up to their own brackets inside, and I like that a lot. It adds to the stability, so like if something won't really get loose in here and start shaking around or anything. You won't get any kind of controller rattle, which is good. Everything is just really pretty much set down well. It's all very solid. Again, I would expect that from an expensive controller, but it's good to know that inside it's built well. They probably could have gotten away with a bigger battery. 1100 milliamp hours isn't bad, but they have enough space here where they probably could have put a larger one, and it's not like they were trying to cut down on weight. This thing's already over 300 grams. What's another 10, 20 grams to get a bigger battery? And then maybe they could have shot for 15 to 20 hours of battery life on it, but they decided to go with the 1100 milliamp hours. Astro, you got enough space. I would recommend the next one. You even have some here that's just empty in this slot. I'd recommend maybe shooting for a larger battery, Astro. That's I think one of the weak points looking inside of this is the size of this battery. Otherwise, though, they did a good job on construction. It looks good inside. So if you're wondering about the quality, it is at least high quality inside as well as outside. So let's go ahead and put it back together. There are your pins, by the way. If you're curious, you can already kind of see those anyway. And those just connect to the back of the board where they run to different chips for to kind of figure everything out for what you have plugged into where. And pretty cool inside, though. I also like that almost everything is modular. The only thing that's not is R1 and L1. Otherwise, though, everything's modular. I like the large red buttons for the back. It makes so it's fairly easy to press without any mispresses or anything. Otherwise, though, let's put it back together. Oh, real quick, if anyone was wondering how the hair triggers work, it's as simple as you figure. You have a switch here, it pops up, and then this plastic pops aside, and it just stops your trigger from pushing all the way down. It is as easy as you would figure it would be. It's nothing crazy. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Astro C40 Tournament Ready controller. It's an interesting controller, definitely. Is it $200 interesting? Well, that's up to you. Hopefully this video helped you decide if it has kind of the quality inside that you would like, and then of course quality outside. Now, the controller itself feels good. Inside though, I think there are some things they can do to make this better overall. Mostly that battery, I think it can get bigger for $200. There's room inside, obviously, at that point I looked in. And otherwise though, it's pretty solid. Everything inside is mostly modular. I like that the buttons are very large on the back, the macro buttons, so you won't really have a mispress very easily, and it's actually harder to press because of that, so you won't get weird accidental presses. Otherwise though, I like it being modular. I like the look of it, I like the feel, but I also like heavier controllers. So if you like lighter controllers that are like 200 to 230 grams, you probably won't like this one as much. However, the rumbles are modular, so technically if you don't want rumble in there, and that would probably free it up pretty well, you could yank those right out, put it back together, although taking it apart is kind of annoying. Getting these back parts off, really annoying. But thanks guys for watching. I hope this was interesting to you. Make sure you like the video if you liked it, dislike it if not, and I'll see you in the next video.